Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tigers Minor League Report Emergency Podcast Edition for the trade deadline. I know it sounds weird to put the emergency pod edition for a trade for essentially a backup catcher, but that's what we do here at Tiger Minor League Report. I'm Rogelio. Alongside me is Chris Brown, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcast. And so, yeah, just about 45 minutes ago, Chris? Is that?
Yeah, maybe more closer to an hour. I don't know. I was you were the one who told me. You texted me that it happened. They traded Carson Kelly to the Texas Rangers, which was really one of the only teams that made sense in terms of needing a catcher.
Absolutely, and you can find Chris's article on Tigers Minor League Report right there on the front page.
Yeah, it's it was a fake trade idea. It involved going to Texas, but I didn't get either of the players right, so it's completely out of date and useless now. But go ahead and read it if you want.
No, but still, I mean, yeah, the premise of where the Tigers are going to go with that, I mean, that's where.
Yeah, I thought they might roll in Chafin and because Texas needs a reliever too and try to get more, but they did what they could with as you said. I actually think Kelly has been kind of their main catcher this year. I think he and Rogers are basically splitting time relatively evenly. But it wouldn't shock me if he plays the plurality of games there in Texas. We talked about the other day that Jonah Heim was really good the last 2 years, but he's been a nothing this year, basically replacement level. I think it's a 75 WRC plus, and Kelly's at 105. So he's been above average offensively and defensively. So I think he should step in right away and play more games. Now it depends on how well he knows the pitching staff, but I don't know. It makes sense for Texas to me.
Yeah, I was surprised that Jonah Heim's. I'm one of the in terms of catchers, he's one of my favorite in the American League. But to see the production down like that kind of surprised me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. It's one of those things where this is why you can never have, in terms of even catchers developing late, and kind of Carson Kelly, who was dealing with some hand injuries while he was in Arizona, and props to Scott Harris for finding Kelly, giving some key at bats. He had some big at bats this year in the Tigers uniform, but as Detroit continues to rebuild or whatever you want to call it, they add pieces. They get two guys back in Hicks and Owens, who Tyler Owens was originally drafted by the Braves. Now let's start with Tyler Owens here. He was a right-handed pitcher and 35 innings, 35 strikeouts, the whip 1.19 in Double-A Frisco. Not top 30 prospect, but Owens, let's talk about him a little bit. Chris is looking for some, I guess, some video pulled up for him as well and how he's done so far. But Owens just gives the Tigers another arm, some much needed reliever depth at the moment.
Yeah, he's a hard thrower, which they don't have a whole lot of right now. And yeah, I mean they need it. He's a college reliever or a minor league reliever. It wasn't like he was starting and he's gonna convert to relief. He is a reliever. He's been closing games for Frisco, and it's mostly a fastball that's got good shape and good velocity, and then he's got a kind of a cutterish slider, I think. You take the velocity. He's not quite 24, so you hope that the pitching staff or the pitching gurus here with the Tigers can do some work on him and maybe turn him into a quality, 7th, 8th inning reliever.
Yeah, they consider that he has like a kind of a max effort release to him a little bit. I'm trying to find something that shows demonstrate the video on him is very, very limited. But he's got an epic beard. I want to find more of analysis than just quote. He has an epic beard.
Yeah, when I was watching, I was like, is that Casey Affleck in a wig? But yeah, I mean, I picked up his last inning I was cutting it up before we went on, and then I'll have it up on our Twitter in a little bit. You can see that it's not a terribly sharp breaking ball, but one of the problems I'm finding is there aren't any. The only broadcast is at the Southern League, the Texas League. It's a Texas
That's actually
League, right?
Mississippi. This is when he was in with the
Oh,
Braves.
this is with the Braves. So in the league that Frisco is in, the only team I can find that has velocity displayed on their minor league broadcasts is San Antonio, and it's still kind of janky and a bad angle. So I was like, I was going through and trying to find one that showed velocities just so people have a better idea, but I gave up on that eventually. But yeah, I mean, I like we said, he is the most likely of the two, I think, to get to the big leagues just because it's a power arm. But yeah, I don't know. I probably wouldn't project him to do anything more than like a seventh inning reliever. He had a shoulder injury this year, but it was to his non-throwing shoulder. So I don't know exactly what happened, but he was out for about a month with a left shoulder injury. But other than that, yeah, I think he's been relatively healthy.
Liam Hicks, I believe, was in the Arizona Fall League last year, I believe.
It's very possible. He used to be a more highly ranked prospect. I know that.
Yes, so he was in the Arizona Fall League. So just did confirm that. I got some video on him right here that we're going to share here right now on the screen.
He's Canadian.
He's Canadian from Toronto. It's pretty cool. So as far as where he will end up going, here's another question too. In terms of where Hicks and Owens will go, more likely if Dingler, we'll get to Dingler too. We're going to be doing a whole thing about Dingler here in a second. But yes, Joey on the chat. By the way, if anybody who's sent over any super chats or any donations, thank you. By the way, that goes a long way. So if you feel like donating, the link is on the bottom there on our PayPal link. So, but anyways, getting back to Hicks here, left-handed hitting bat. I got a text saying, quote, he's a light hitting Donnie Sands in return. And I don't know, I just didn't think that was fair. I haven't seen enough of Hicks to even merit that decision. But either way, the Tigers get some much needed catching depth back in the return too, because the Tigers have, as far as like injuries go with the catching this year, or just there was I'm trying to think of the first round or the draft pick they had last year. They had a couple of injuries they had injury to Masengo. Then they had injury to the Canadian kid they picked up last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to draw a blank on his name right now, but
yeah, and the junior college catcher,
yeah. So it just gives them, and that just gives them another, and probably more likely Alfonso might head up to Toledo at this point. Eliza Alfonso, who's done a pretty good job hitting and catching down in Erie. So Hicks could end up just going to kind of fill the void there, where Steven Scott, who was a veteran catcher, has been down in Toledo. I think he's been playing a mixture of DH, first base, and catching. So they don't have and Curtis, you're absolutely correct. They do not have the catching depth right now.
Yeah. Now Alan asked if either is going on the 40-man. I don't know I think Owens may have to be after this year. If he was a high school draft pick.
Yeah, he was Rule 5 eligible
in 2019. So that's the same year that Riley Green was drafted.
Yeah.
And Hicks is not, I don't think, but I don't know if they would have to worry about that or not. And he seems like a third catcher at best. He did go to the Arizona Fall League and he destroyed the Arizona Fall League. I don't know if you mentioned his stats. He hit 449 with
a 9-game in the Arizona Fall League
with 5 doubles, 16 walks, and 8 strikeouts. The power is not there. It sounds like it's pretty outstanding bat to ball skills. He just doesn't have strength and power to hit for extra base hits. So I don't know what you do with that, particularly also if he's not a terribly strong defensive catcher. But again, we haven't, gone through and watched to see. But like you said, like he reminds me a little bit of Alfonso, who you mentioned might be going up to Toledo. One of those two will probably go up to Toledo. Just as a contact specialist who maybe isn't the best defender, but there are worse things to have, I guess, than a left-handed hitting, a good contact catcher. If he can fake it behind the plate a little bit, and that you can always coach that up some. So I don't know. Like you say, you're not going to get a huge return for 60 games or less. I guess if it's a catcher, it's going to be more like 40 tops. But I don't know, interesting name. And then Owens, I think, is the one who's more likely to make any kind of impact in the big leagues. And then even then, it's probably like a 7th inning reliever.
Yeah, so that leads us to what should happen. Probably will more likely will be the case, as Dillon Dingler will probably get the call up to Detroit. And you look at his stats this week, Chris, and we're going to be doing the full minor league show tomorrow with Brandon Day at 9:00 here. You can find us live on YouTube. But the week, it's one of those things when you look at the week that Dillon Dingler has had, Chris, and it's like he was just almost saying like this is his final song in Toledo. Maybe he knew. I don't know what it was, but he was a man possessed this week, and stats show that because he was just a power hitting machine all week, just hitting just monster shots. He's also third in the International League in hitting. His batting average is over 300, but this is the week he's had. In 4 games and 15 at bats, he went 9 for 15, 4 home runs, 2 doubles, 8 RBIs, 5 walks to 1 strikeout. He batted 600, had OBP of 700, OPS over 2,000. Just ridiculous cartoon-like numbers. And yes, he's hitting 300 in the International League with 17 home runs and 52 RBIs. Not a bad way to go, my friend.
No, it's been an outstanding development, the Dinglesance, where I just didn't think he was ever going to hit, and he was always a great defender. He hit for us in West Michigan in 2021, but then it was just kind of a struggle for the next couple of years in Erie. Couldn't stay healthy, and obviously playing catcher is very hard. Beats up your body. But yeah, this offensive explosion this year is very, very nice to see. He's got a 137 WRC plus in Toledo. That's easily the best for any Tigers catcher going back to 2006. Any Tigers catching prospect in Toledo. Now, Alex Avila didn't even go to Toledo. He just skipped right over Toledo. But yeah, it's I don't know. We've seen enough of the rookies coming up this year to know that sometimes guys struggle, and I'm sure Dingler will struggle. But he's certainly earned the right to get this call up, and it's pretty exciting. He's their third player from the 2020 draft to make the majors. I don't know if we could have predicted one day that Dingler and Keith would be in the big leagues and Torkelson would be in AAA, but here we are. And he still is an outstanding defender. Very strong arm, works really well with pitching. I think he's a good framer. We don't have access to the minor league framing data, as it were. But yeah, it's well earned from him. He's been grinding for a while now.
And the other thing too, we've noticed about Dingler, we talked about this, I think offline. I think we mentioned this on the minor league podcast last week, is he's laying off those sliders. He's been laying off the pitches quite a bit. And there was something that I talked to Greg Eng, the voice of the Erie Seawolves, on Friday when I was out there for the Jackson Jobe start. Is something to consider with the ABS system out there, and I think that's why you're seeing such a difference between AAA and AA. As far as pitchers go, to learn the strike zone and everything, it's one thing. But then even as a hitter too, that also plays a factor into what you're going to swing at, what you're not going to swing at. And I think that once he made the adjustment, but just the walk percentage is something that the Tiger fans should be encouraged with, because I know the one thing I want to talk about with a little bit of caution is that he might take some time to adjust, but I still don't. What I've seen this year, comparatively speaking, you raise your walk rate by 3%. You cut your strikeout rate by 10%. I mean that's saying something to me. That's saying that you're, of course, seeing the eyeball. You're seeing the eyeball. You're seeing the ball better. And also you're understanding too, perhaps in addition to picking up the ball better as well, understanding what pitching sequence they're going to do against you. If you're not just going to swing just a swing.
Yeah, I think it's entirely possible. Catching is so hard. I maintain it's the hardest position in all professional sports. People tell me about quarterback and so forth, and I say, yes, that's a very difficult and important position, but catching is the most taxing, I think, in all sports. I guess I've never been an offensive lineman either, but just so much you have to think about defensively that a lot of times catchers don't even work on their offense until they're older. And that could be what's happening here. I still think we should probably set the ceiling for now for Dingler as a backup catcher or a part of a platoon. Not going to be, like an all-star everyday catcher, But if he hits like he's been hitting, which is probably not safe to expect that in the big leagues. Maybe he could be on the catcher who plays 2/3 of the games, and that would be exciting because we've always believed in the athleticism and the defense. If the offense is even average, he'd be a very valuable player. We've seen that with Kelly this year, right? Kelly was at a 105 WRC plus, which is great. It's like the 7th best from a catcher for the Tigers in the last 25 years. So just get to average, and you'll be very valuable. And I will say this, I put out the other day, some kind of minor league numbers against certain types of pitching. And the one that raised some eyebrows there was Dingler was only hitting 212 against fastballs that are 94 plus. But our buddy Brandon, who was on the minor league show with us from Bless You Boys, noticed that if you switch it to 95 plus, he's hitting like 280. And so I was like, what in the world? And I looked into it, and sure enough, he's put like 8 balls in play between 90 and 90.5 or 94 and 94.5 miles per hour, and they've all been outs. But he's hitting just fine above 94. So it's one of those things where it's a very random, weird sample size issue. So I'm sure the big league pitchers will find his holes, but that doesn't appear to be the big hole that we were worried about.
Yeah, and that's where that was a good catch there too by Brandon when he mentioned that. And so they have the context right there for it. It goes a long way. And even if somebody mentioned he would be a DH option too. Yeah, Kevin mentioned he would be another DH option on the bench. So that's a good point too. So that leads to what's left for the Tigers now. So is Jack Flaherty going to be traded? I think he will be. I mean, you look at some of the things that look at the Padres, man. The Padres, Dave Dombrowski, somebody mentioned in the chat, he gave up 2 guys that were having some really good years. I was surprised they gave up the was it
Klassen? George
Klassen? Yeah, Klassen. Sam Alleghetti, who was an Italian-born lefty, who I thought the Tigers would go after for Flaherty. The Angels got 2 really good starters for a reliever. I don't know. I just thought the Dombrowski gave a lot, but the Rays have, once again, they're just thinking about next year. They're thinking about the future. They're competing, and Isaac Paredes, who, by the way, somebody was mentioning, like to see him back in the Tigers uniform. After some of the things you heard, or I've heard in the background. But anyway.
Yeah, well, you hope maybe he's grown up a little bit, but at the same time, that was a confusing trade to people. But to me, it was like, well, that's kind of smart. That's what we want more of the Tigers to do, where the Cubs have a very good farm system, a lot of depth, and so they traded from that depth, and they traded a big leaguer that Christopher Morel, who was flawed but very talented, and they got Paredes for 3+ years. He's not a free agent until 2028, I don't think. So that's one of the things you can do. That was one of the things I proposed kind of with the Jace Young trade for Edward Cabrera, is that you don't have to just do these deals for expiring players or deal prospects for, big leaguers when you're winning. You can trade your prospects when you're not winning too, to try to become a winner. So, but I don't expect anything like that. I think now you touched on it. I mean, the reliever returns right now are pretty strong. The Padres gave up, as you mentioned, Dylan Lesko and a couple other prospects. Dylan Lesko was their first-round pick. They gave him almost $4 million a couple years ago. Still has a really interesting arm, but has never thrown strikes in pro ball and needs a lot of work. And the Rays are very good at fixing guys, or at least finding something to do with them. But they traded 3 legit prospects for a year and a half of Jason Adam, I think, or a year and a third. Yeah. And you could argue that he's about the same quality as Andrew Chafin. Now he gets both righties and lefties out at the same rate, where Chafin can get righties out, but he's much, much better against lefties. But still, Chafin has that extra deal or year on his deal. The Tigers should be asking for and should be expecting a pretty solid return for him. You just have to hope they're not asking for too much. But as you said, Dombrowski gave up 2 quality minor league starters for a reliever. I mean, that's probably the sort of return you'd be looking for.
Yeah, and this is to me, one of the things too about this, as far as this market goes too, the Cubs got Nate Peterson from Toronto, and Peterson was at one point a really highly regarded prospect, and he's kind of, I don't want to say fizzled out a little bit, but I was surprised that Toronto tried to do more with him.
Yeah, I think it may be one of those things where they were like, you just need to change the scenery. Pearson was a guy who's oft injured, just as every Toronto pitching prospect is, unfortunately. It seems like everybody they've drafted over the last 5 years gets hurt. I don't even remember who they got. They got a couple, I think, younger players from the Cubs. But, yeah, I don't know. You'd like to see a little bit more activity from the Tigers. You'd like to see a little bit more creativity. I think it would be foolish for them to not trade Flaherty before he starts tomorrow. That as much as they need, another body, it wouldn't shock me if, I believe trading Kelly opens up a 40-man spot because he was on the 40-man. And as we said, that Hicks and Owens, I don't think have to be on the 40-man just yet. So they may add, we might see Lyle Lockhart or Brant Herter get added to the 40-man roster and be up tomorrow, be ready to pitch in case Flaherty can't go. But yeah, I mean, if he starts tomorrow, I have to assume that he's staying, and they're just going to try to get the qualifying offer for him.
Yeah, and this is where I think Lockhart or Herter had a really good start. I think it was Saturday. So yeah. So that being said, yeah, we know that it would open up a 40-man spot on for Kelly. So essentially, you have Lockhart or Herter, but actually for Lockhart, it would make sense because his next start would be either, I believe it would be tomorrow, or I'm sorry, with Toledo. I mean, Toledo's technically have an off day. His next start would have been Tuesday.
But would it be 5 days when it was
5 days?
So
he pitched Friday, I think I want to say Thursday or Friday. I think he pitched. I think it's Thursday.
Yeah, we can look.
Yeah. We do have
and he has been lights out in July. I think it's like a 1.1 or 1.29, 1.3 ERA, 28 strikeouts in 20 innings. Batters are hitting 130 against him. He's been really, really good. And so he's, I think, certainly deserving of a call-up too, which would be interesting. It would require us to write 2 what to expect pieces. But that's always fun.
Yeah, and there should be we'll be recapping. There'll be a piece recapping the trade for this evening's trade for tomorrow. Also, what's funny is, like, I was thinking about, should we do emergency pod just in case the Flaherty trade happens during, and our luck, what's going to happen is it's going to happen like 10:30 at night. It's just going to happen one of those things where, because if we're looking at, so I've been looking at all weekend. I randomly text. So here's how the weekend texting has been with Chris. So I've been checking out games I'm not going to give away my entire strategy because then somebody's going to try to do the same thing. But let's just say I've been watching a lot of minor league baseball in certain markets, if you will, of certain teams where the Tigers are thinking about trading. And so I've been looking at hug watches. I've been watching at certain players that haven't played and, like, just looking at patterns, everything. And it's pretty simple to do. I'm not trying to say condescending about that, but it's common sense a little bit. And so anyway, yes, give me Lyle or give me Def, Patrick Henry, 1774.
It was one of the famous phrases during the Revolutionary War. Yes. No, I don't know. We're trying to. It's not that hard to figure out which teams need these guys or want these guys the Tigers want. Although it can be tough because Flaherty and Chafin have like a dozen homes apiece. Now some of those maybe are gone with some of the trades that have already happened, but I still think that there's still plenty of landing spots, and that's, I think, kind of, hopefully what Scott Harris and company are trying to do is trying to, drive up the price a little bit and get a better return. But I still expect I expect Flaherty to go and probably Chafin, but who knows?
Yeah, I don't see what's gonna. I mean, I think that's going to happen. I think there's going to be a trade. I think Flaherty should be next up as the most logical. It makes sense. As far as, and then this is the last question we'll do here, and it comes in from Pickles in Peanut Butter 2566 on YouTube. He says, so if Flaherty gets traded, what do you think our plan will be? The Tigers' plan will be in the offseason? More reclamation projects on one-year deals or some free agent signings? Well, you would think with the free agent market being better, even on the second tier side of things, that they would go after a couple of arms or positional players if that's what they're aiming for. But I still think they'll probably get a reclamation project or two, but it's hard to say right now. I mean, I think they're going to push the youth movement even more based off what the organization is doing right now. But to Sean's point, he's absolutely right. The hitters are lacking right now a little bit. And so I would think that whoever they would get on the side of Flaherty a little bit, they would get at least. I like to see an outfielder. I keep saying this, and I think I've been saying this for a solid year now. Get an outfielder with some power, a right-handed hitting outfielder. The outfield depth right now is dangerously thin. You just have Riley Green go on the injury list, and you look down in Toledo, and it's skeleton crew down there. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, it would be a right-handed power-hitting center fielder. Those don't grow on trees, and so yeah, I mean, you're still looking at Meadows, Carpenter, Green, Malloy, Perez as your outfield. I don't know. You'd hope that they could get somebody who could hit for power. I still think they need a first baseman. They need a third baseman. They need a shortstop. They may need another catcher now. I do think they'll go for at least one more pitching reclamation project. They've done 2 each offseason, right? They did Matthew Boyd and Michael Lorenzen. They did Maeda and Flaherty. I guess Maeda wasn't a reclamation project as much, but they seem to go for their starting pitchers in 2. So I've brought up several times that Walker Buehler would be a really interesting case. I don't know. Somebody might end up giving him a multi-year deal. He's coming back from injury soon, and if he pitches well, he'll probably get another multi-year deal. But he's a guy with 2 Tommy Johns on his arm now. And if he doesn't pitch well, that might be better for the Tigers. You can go get a guy with a really interesting arm and hope that you can get it fixed. I haven't looked through the other free agents out there who might be interesting. I'm looking now. Yeah, I don't know. Nobody screams. Oh, man. I'm just looking. The Brewers have an $8 million club option on Freddie Peralta. That seems unfair.
Damn.
Well, Spencer Turnbull will be back out there.
Yeah.
Joe Ross. Yeah. Jake Odorizzi. Yeah, there's not a whole lot out there. But we'll see. That's why I thought maybe trade for a struggling young pitcher right now and have him for 3 years, fix him, and then have him for a while. But I don't know. We'll see if they can do something like that.
So, by the way, baseball trade values where it tells you the value of a trade gave the deal is accepted by our model. So they accepted that model.
Hooray.
Hooray for whatever that's worth. So as far as here, in terms of like the names we should look out for too, another, if you're looking at the minor leagues tonight, do yourself a favor. I'm sure right now, if you have anything to do, I mean, outside the Olympics, because I've been watching the Olympics here and there. Right now, you see here, I'm trying to look if it's still on or not. Where did it go? Where am I at right now? Well, there's one team right now that's on right now. You can watch down in Houston. The Space Cowboys right now. So maybe there's a hug watch going on there. Houston's in need for pitching. So you're about to watch House of the Dragon. Oh yeah, that's right. It's coming on right now. So, all right. So apparently we need to inspire Detroit Degenerate's wife. You guys are awesome for doing this anytime, anywhere. I wish my wife would do it anytime, anywhere. Oh boy. Well,
look at that dog in the background.
Oh yeah. Oh, I was eating something earlier and she's been smelling it, so she's been buttering me up a little bit.
I want that.
Yeah, she's like, I want your chips, Dad. I want your little. Okay. Anyway, enough about that. Enough about the dog. But if you're watching, also, I mean, I was trying to see if Norwich was on right now, or Norfolk was on right now, and that just game went final earlier today, so no hug watches there. And everybody, there's no pinch hit either. So anyway, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. And we'll be back tomorrow night with the normal podcast. Hopefully there'll be another trade to break down, and you can watch again. There'll be an article on this in the morning on Dingler on the whole trade breakdown. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Again, we do this voluntarily. YouTube donations or donations to the website go a long way. Go help and pay for trips like we did on Friday when I went to go see Jackson Joe pitch. So before this dog, stop it. Before this dog starts losing their mind. Have a good night, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks
for watching or listening.
Or both at the same time.
Or both at the same time.